Hi, everybody. This week I am going to talk about building relationships and specifically building relationships with the clients and the people that we work with and serve. So, though building relationships with our coworkers and supervisors and leaders is really important, I'm really choosing to kind of focus on the building of relationships with clients. So, in my experience, I've worked a lot with a lot of different populations. And I think, building relationships, the foundation is always the same, regardless of the population, regardless of the age of the client. I think it's always just really important to start at the very basics, and that's by showing up. That's by being transparent, being honest, showing who you are professionally, what your expectations for the relationship are. I think that really helps set a tone for what a professional relationship could look like. I had mentioned in my boundaries video that I always start by, letting a client know what they can expect from me, which is honesty and transparency. I kind of have a really calm demeanor. I don't tend to kind of rise to the level that some clients get to when they're experiencing, a crisis. I really try to remain calm. And that's something that I always tell them. I always start by telling them, I'm a mandated reporter. And while I have your best interest at heart, and what we typically will talk about will remain confidential, if something is concerning and rises to a level of further intervention being needed, I'm going to have to report that. And there have been instances where I've had to do that. And I've always had that conversation with the individual prior to, making a report. I think one of the questions that we ask a lot when we, or actually 100% of the time, when we're interviewing people to come into my place of employment, which is also where I'm doing my internship, is what's your process for building a relationship with someone who experiences a significant trauma history? In my specific place of employment, all of my residents have a criminal history, a very past that's full of a lot of neglect, trauma, abuse. So they all have trust issues. I have one resident who suffers from a very significant TBI and is very verbally aggressive on the daily. And just the other day, they came to me and they were apologizing for some names they had called me the day before in an interaction that we had had. And my response to them was, despite those things, I'm still going to show up for you. And that's what I do, every time there's an incident, there is an altercation where they're upset with something I've said or done, or they're having a hard time. I'm called names, I'm kicked out of the apartment, I'm fired from service, on the weekly. And every time I show back up for that game of cribbage, or I show back up for that appointment that I told them 6 months ago I would go and support them and advocate for them. And just really functioning at that human level of being who I say I'm going to be and doing what I say I'm going to do. I think that those are the most successful ways to build successful working relationships, is just holding true to what you have said, delivering. If I tell you I'm going to call you at 11 o'clock, I'm probably going to call you at 10:59, or 11 right on the dot. Or if I say I'm going to check in 20 minutes, guess who's checking in 20 minutes? And it really, and that's come from feedback from people I've worked with in the past, residents, clients alike, the feedback I've gotten, because I'm constantly seeking feedback for how I can better perform, what I can do better, how I can improve. And that's been a lot of the feedback I've got, is you're just consistent. you're where you say you need to be, and I know that when you tell me you're going to do something, you're going to do it, and I can trust that. And so that's really how I've started, you know, how I start all of my relationships. Now, it's not always 100% successful because sometimes people just don't want to be successful in those moments and they don't want the support you're giving. And that's also something else to remember, is that it's not about me. It's not about us as their providers. It's client centered and it's about them and their goals and what they want. So, those are just some of the basic ways that I start building relationships, and how I start building them is also how I maintain them. And that is just truly being authentic, transparent, trustworthy, and consistent. So those are just some of the things that I do, and I'd be interested to hear how all of you go about building your relationships and what's maybe worked and not. So thanks.